All right, Miles, let's shift to the Oregon Ducks here for a little bit. This is a team looking to build off of last season's success. They're looking to make a run to the Pac-12 championship game, hopefully win that title, go to the Rose Bowl, or potentially make a run at the college football playoff. But in order to get there, they need a solid spring practice. So looking for a lot of young guys to step up. And there's one young guy in particular that's really opened the eyes of his head coach, who thinks this young guy may take a massive leap into 2023.
Yeah, Nick. And spring practice starting up is big for everybody, all football fans. Really the first taste since the national championship ended last year when you're talking about college football. So this is very exciting for everybody. And there's a lot of guys looking to make the next jump, to make the next leap, to see how they've been practicing so far in the offseason, who's developed the most. And that's what we want to know in the comments below from the Ducks fans. Who do you think in spring ball, who are you most excited to see? Who do you think can maybe have developed and make the biggest impact on this team this coming season? Let us know in the comments below. But Nick, who is Dan Lanning like in spring ball so far?
Yeah, so it's one of those things in college football. The biggest leap that usually happens with players, especially players on the offensive and defensive lines, is between their freshman year and their sophomore year. The freshman year, you're kind of like a bull in a china shop. You're running around just trying to keep your wits about you and just get your bearings. After your freshman year, you go through winter practice, you go into your first spring ball, and you start to get a better feel for yourself and develop into the player you are going to be the rest of your career. And Dan Lanning has been very impressed with none other than Josh Connolly, the freshman last year, who was the highest rated offensive tackle prospect Oregon has ever recruited. And according to Ducks Wire, Dan Lanning's been very impressed with Connolly has done this season. He's so far this offseason, he's been very impressed with the way Connolly has handled himself, and even just dumb stuff like stretching. He's been very impressed with how he's handling himself in the classroom. He's impressed with his leadership. He's very excited for what Connolly can offer this offensive line group and this entire team going forward, because this is a guy in Connolly, Mize, that is every physical tool you could physically ask for. This kid out of Seattle is massive, has great feet, had a little bit of an inconsistent freshman year, but he showed the flashes of the player he could be. He's a great athlete. The guy caught a touchdown pass, so you got to give him some credit there as well. So going forward, the fact that Connolly already in spring ball is catching the eye and the praise of Dan Lanning shows that Connolly made all the right moves so far in the offseason to get his mind and body prepared for football, and it's showing on the practice field already. And I think that's a great sign for him, the offensive line, the offense, and frankly, the entire team going forward.
Yeah, Nick, and I like some of the comments that Lanning made. We talked about the intensity in which he stretches, doing all the little things right. Because a guy like Connolly coming into Oregon, he was kind of the big dog. He was the number one prospect in Oregon's 2022 recruiting class. He was the highest ever rated offensive tackle to come to Oregon. So a guy like that maybe doesn't have quite as big of a chip on his shoulder. Maybe he feels like he's the big guy on campus. He might not have to work quite as hard, but this does not seem to be the case whatsoever with Connolly. He has a lot of really talented Ducks linemen to live up to. You think of guys like Penny Sewell or Tyler Crosby. He just can come in and do all of this little stuff with such intensity to show that he is motivated to go. A guy with this level of talent, he's going to be really, really special going forward. I think he's going to be developing into a really nice offensive lineman. I like how you can put your own personal perspective on it, Nick, letting us know that going from freshman to sophomore year is when a guy can make a big jump. And a guy like Connolly, who's by all accounts pretty good last year, if he can make a big jump into this coming season, I think it's going to be even bigger for Oregon with all of the big moves they've already made all around the ball. Very good recruiting, transfer portal. Just there's a lot of buzz around Oregon. And I think this is going to be huge going forward, watching how Connolly develops in spring ball.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll really focus on is that Connolly had kind of a potential excuse to maybe not compete as hard because of how aggressive Oregon was in the transfer portal. If Connolly would have been mentally weak, he would have seen a lot of these guys come in and maybe feel like he was being outclassed and potentially relegated. Because if you look at what the Ducks did in the transfer portal, they absolutely crushed it on the offensive line. They brought in a Johnny Cornelius from Rhode Island. He was the number one ranked offensive tackle in the transfer portal. They also brought in George Silva, who could compete as well. He was the number one ranked JUCO offensive tackle last season. So they brought in two other elite prospect guys, number one offensive tackle in the transfer portal, number one offensive tackle in JUCO, brought him into Oregon. And with that perspective, you could have seen Connolly shrink into a shell, get down on himself, maybe get lazy if he wasn't mentally tough. No, it's the exact opposite. The guy comes in, he's working harder, he's approaching the classroom serious, he's approaching his strength and conditioning seriously, and he's showing it on the practice field already. And you just love to see that from an environment perspective. That means the whole team, because obviously Connolly doing well is important, but the whole team is, you got a competitive atmosphere, everyone working towards the common goal. Everyone's competing with each other, trying to fight for those starting positions. And it's one of those things, it sounds so cliche, but iron sharpens iron. So of course, bringing in some great transfers increases the talent level on your team. You want to play with better players, but also elevates the competitiveness and talent players of the players you already have on your team. And from that perspective, a lot of credit has to go to Dan Lanning and his organization, the way they're constantly focused on upgrading the talent level and pushing their players to get better. And the results like we've seen so far in spring ball continue, this Oregon team is going to be a force come the regular season.